Hello, LinkedIn and YouTube. Good morning. Megan Wessels here. I am so excited to share my friend Amanda, who is also one of my coaches. She is also one of the expert resources for our mastermind members. Amanda is a functional medicine health consultant. She helps women optimize their health through balancing their hormones naturally. And she did this for me. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring her here today, because what I learned from her and continue to learn is so powerful. It is going to blow your mind what she shares. These 5 things you do every day that affect your hormones. I guarantee you had no idea that this really happens. And I guarantee that you do each one of them every day too. So anyways, I'm Megan Wessels. I'm the woman behind Powerful Partners. I bring women entrepreneurs together to collaborate and empower one another through dinner parties and masterminds so that they can uncover their true power and really live into their potential. And it's difficult to do that as a business owner, especially when your health is not in good shape, right? Think about like the times you have to go back and forth to the doctor, or you're getting all these tests done, or you just don't feel good and you can't show up to work that day. That's time away from your business, and it can really affect how your business grows. And I think a lot of us too, we're growing a business not just because it's all about the money. It's more about the freedom. It's about giving us that freedom to spend more time with our family and do the things that we love in our life. And it's really hard to do that if you don't feel good. So Amanda is going to share 5 things that you do every day to affect your hormones. Amanda and I'm going to let her introduce herself, but we met through a business coaching program several years ago. And it just so happens we both live in the Chicagoland area. So we've stayed in touch. She's been to some of my dinner parties. She's been a dear friend. And she helped me tremendously with my health challenges. A few years ago, I was in a place, I was so lost and frustrated. And I'm sure some of you out there can relate. There were all these things, these signs going on, right? And I was breaking out. My face was breaking out worse than I ever had before, worse than when I was in high school. I suddenly developed PCOS. I had, if you're not, don't know what that is, but it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. Yes. And so I developed cysts on my ovaries and had to get surgery to have them removed. I had terrible migraines. I was not feeling good. I lost a ton of energy. I gained weight, and I had no idea what was going on in my body. It literally just happened like overnight. And Amanda, so I went to my OBGYN. Of course, we go to our closest doctors, right? And her only suggestion was to put me back on birth control, which I know was one of the reasons that my body was having this reaction in the first place. So that was not a solution for me. And I went out to seek other more holistic solutions. And then I learned that Amanda was helping women with their hormone imbalance. And she took me, I joined her program. We did some one-on-one coaching. What was so amazing is that she had me take the Dutch test. You can talk a little bit more about it, Amanda, but we got the results back, and I would have never been able to decipher what this test is. It's literally in another language, but Amanda could tell me exactly what was going on in my body. And from that, she was able to suggest new supplements, daily supplements that I take that has really helped my body get back into balance. She suggested different foods that I can be eating. So I shifted the way I eat. I shifted the way my morning routine, things that I do, even like nightly routine. And all of that has helped me get my health back in balance and feel amazing. I have more energy now than I ever have before. So that is the gift Amanda is sharing with everyone that she works with. So tell us a little bit more, Amanda, do you want to share anything more about what you do?
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you, Megan. And as you know, we've had such a great time in our friendship over the last several years. I absolutely love your dinner parties, and it was just such a delight to get to work together and help support you with your hormones as well. And you mentioned the Dutch hormone test. I mean, that is definitely a powerful tool we use with many of the clients that we work with. And it's because it has this ability to really understand. I always say the old saying of test, don't guess, because sometimes there can be symptoms that the way we feel, they seem very similar, whether, for example, whether your cortisol levels are through the roof and the really, really high levels of stress hormone, or sometimes the symptoms can actually mimic or seem very similar when your cortisol levels are rock bottom. But without utilizing something like the Dutch hormone test or some other vehicles, then you really don't know which approach to take, right? How best to support your body uniquely. So I do think, just like you had the experience of really understanding your body and coming from a place of empowerment is step number one. I mean, we often say to our clients that, it's kind of ironic. Many women can like recite off the tip of their tongue the numbers in their credit card, but they wouldn't know the first thing about their estrogen or their progesterone or their cortisol balance, right? So it's an interesting reflection to see how aware are we of our overall body's biochemistry, and because that is, hormones literally are life. They literally signal every single functionality in the body, and it's majority of Americans, literally over 90%, will experience some type of hormone imbalance in their life. And for women, particularly in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s, during the transition from perimenopause into menopause and beyond, that is a very kind of challenging time, in the sense that there's just a lot of movement, there's a lot of changes. So what we used to know or what we used to experience is oftentimes no longer works in the same way when we reach that stage of life.
Yeah. So this isn't just for women. This is for men also. And we have some people chiming in here. So thank you, Siam. Good to see you again. Yes, he talks about the thyroid affecting hormones, and that he's had surgery 4 times. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine. Oh, that's got to be really stressful. And I hope you get something from this today, Sam. And Meg McKean, so good to see you here too. Yes, you are all going to learn so much from Amanda today. It's going to blow your mind that these are things that you do every day that affect your hormones. She's literally, we were going through the list and I'm like, are you serious? Really? Wow. Okay. So Amanda, what is number one, the first thing that people do every day that affect their hormones?
Number one is what I call morning minutes. So literally it is the first 5 minutes of your day that dramatically affect your hormones. And it's just like, I believe it was Cyan you said that was tuning in, that was commenting on thyroid health. Well, there's something called the HPATG axis, which stands for hypothalamus, which is located in the brain, the pituitary gland, which is also located in the brain, the thyroid, the adrenals, and then the gonads. And those organs in the body, those glands, are all connected and synchronized and constantly signaling back and forth to each other. But the hypothalamus is the brain, which is really that ability to perceive our environment. It's our external perception, which first communicates to the pituitary, which is then going to assess the biochemical internal environment, that balance inside the body. And those two things together then will trickle down and fuel the thyroid, whether the thyroid and then the adrenals perceive that our environment is relaxed and abundant and clear and on track and everything is a-okay, or if it signals like, holy crap, stranger danger, it's so overwhelming, there's too much to do, I can't control it, this life is dangerous, right? I'm being a little theatrical here, but literally starting the first 5 minutes in your day, what is that practiced train of thought or that practiced behavior? For some people, it's to wake up and jump out of bed and feel almost panicked of like, oh my gosh, all the things I have to get done today.
Yeah.
Or dread, a sense of like I'm buried underneath a pile.
Like going over the list in your head.
Yeah, going over the list. And if you're doing that from the very start of your day, you are essentially signaling to your body that the world is not safe. And the world is too demanding, overwhelming. It's not setting you up for success. And many major studies show us that how you begin your day has the most significant impact, and meaning the emotional set point has the most significant impact on your productivity your clarity, and your sense of well-being throughout the rest of the day. So creating that habit of, and again, we all talk about the morning routine, but you can't overstate the benefit of it enough. Like those first 5 minutes, what's that emotional set point that you're practicing over and over has such a cascade. I want you to think of like that whole cascade of signaling to the rest of your hormones in the body.
So if a morning routine seems too overwhelming for you, just focus on the first 5 minutes.
Yep.
That's all. First 5 minutes. And a lot of people I know, and I've done this before, I've done this too. First thing you do, grab your phone and start scrolling. And what happens then? You're seeing all the awful things that are going on in the world that, you know, that the media wants you to see and believe that aren't really true. It's just one side of a story, and there are many, many, many sides of the story. And you choose if you can choose what you believe every morning in that first 5 minutes, it will completely shift versus being in response to everything else that's going on in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe it is grabbing your phone, but tuning into an uplifting podcast or something. Even that change of content will dramatically shift your first 5 minutes.
Yeah. I use the Calm app every day at night. I use the sleep stories. I use it for meditation, the sounds. I mean, I use it so much. Yeah, it's incredible. That's what I do first thing in the morning. I grab my phone and use my Calm app. Great. So number 1 was first 5 minutes of your day, making sure that it's a positive, uplifting, setting your mind in the right position to move forward for the rest of your day. Okay. Number 2, what is number 2?
Number 2 is your morning makeup. So that's obviously more applicable to women, but it's kind of the same concept applies to men as well. Studies from the Environmental Working Group show us that the average person puts 12 products every day on their body. And of those 12 products, they contain on average 168 chemical toxins.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's just phenomenal when you think about from the shampoo to the soap to the lotions to the makeup to the deodorant, all of the things, toothpaste with fluoride, right? All of the things that we use just to simply get ready for the day tend to contain high amounts of chemicals. And many of those chemicals act as hormonal disruptors, endocrine disruptors. In particular, there are many forms of what are called xenoestrogens, which means they molecularly are very, very similar to estrogen hormones. And in the body, they almost signal to our cells in the same way that an estrogen molecule would.
Wow.
So it's very common to have what's called estrogen dominance, which is where you have relative higher amounts of estrogen in relation to progesterone. And especially during our 40s and our 50s. And even in men, this is very common because sometimes when we see men who develop extra fatty adipose tissue and almost like breast development, oftentimes it can honestly be from external xenoestrogens that are coming from the products that they use.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy. Okay. So the lotions, the makeup, the toothpaste you use can literally change the balance of your hormones, especially if you're doing that every day, right? It's just a repeated process. So you're constantly,
So one thing in particular about the toothpaste is most toothpaste contain fluoride, which is because fluoride is something that is going to kill a lot of microbial agents. However, it also competes for signaling and interrupts thyroid in particular, thyroid balance. So again, it's being mindful of one of the resources that I love to share is if you look at the Environmental Working Group, EWG, online, you can put in different product types and names, and then they'll just pull up and tell you like if it's on the good list, they call it like the clean list or the dirty list. And you can get a sense of perhaps finding a more natural alternative for your favorite products.
Okay, that's great to know. Wow, I did not know about fluoride. All right. So number 2 was your morning makeup and all the things you put on your body. What is number 3?
Number 3 is breathing breaks. Again, it sounds so simple, but oxygen is literally O2 is a cofactor that is needed for almost every stage of the citric acid cycle. So when we think of energy, right, our cells' ability to produce something that's called ATP, which is essentially the storage unit of energy. And in order for us to have the experience of vitality, clarity, focus, enthusiasm, we quite literally need to be able to have cells that are capable of producing a high amount of ATP.
Okay.
And in order to do that citric acid cycle, it requires oxygen. That seems self-evident. Of course, we all breathe all day long. However, you'd be shocked to find out how many people just are very unconscious in their breathing and take very short, shallow breaths. So being intentional about even just setting a timer on your phone, like 5 times a day, breathing break. And when that goes off, you actually pause what you do and just do slow, maybe 4 count breath in, 4 count exhale. You could still be working, still be typing, but just become aware of your breath. That's going to increase your oxygenation, which not only helps to fight cancer, because cancer cells cannot survive in an oxygen-rich environment,
Wow.
but it also balances your hormones, because in order for all of those hormones, including the thyroid, including the adrenals, to do their job, they quite literally need oxygen.
Wow. Okay. So 4 counts in and 4 counts out is what you suggest. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I love that. I have been breathing a lot more too, just like taking little breaks. Yeah. It's just having that awareness.
It is. It's the mindfulness around it.
Yeah. And it does. It gives me a lot more energy like when I do it. So that's awesome. Okay. So breathing fresh air, taking breaths. And then what is number 4?
Number 4 is eating hygiene. And I'm going to share a story here because I just want to drop in how potent this distinction is. When I say eating hygiene, I'm talking about literally the assistance with our digestive processes by slowing down and thoroughly chewing your food. I know that sounds kind of, I don't know, silly in a way. And yet, if you do a little experiment where you take just like a couple of almonds, for example, and you eat them the way that you normally would, and then you put them in your mouth and you chew them a minimum of 20 times, and notice the difference in the consistency, how completely radically different that typically is from what most people do when they're eating, right? And the reason that's so important is because, again, every single hormonal function in the body is nutrient dependent, which means we have to be able to, even if we have the healthiest food. I remember working with a woman, Anne, who came to me just really depleted in her energy levels, and her thyroid function was low, her cortisol level was suboptimal, and she had a super healthy diet, right? Mostly seafood, eggs, tons of fruits and vegetables, very few processed foods. So on the surface, she's like, I'm eating all the right things. And I said, yes, you are. However, you're eating them at your desk at work, in the car, on the go, very, very distracted.
Yeah.
So even her body's ability to break apart those nutrients and to separate them into the key things so that the cells can use them, it just wasn't happening. Right? So eating hygiene, in particular, starting with the chewing, like your food before it is swallowed should be almost like a liquidy texture, which I know sounds a little weird, but for a lot of us, it's still large clumps.
Yeah. And we did this test. I know as part of your program. And this is one of the things that blew my mind when I started working with you. It was like, really? Like the number of times I chew, and also drinking water, right? Yes. Before and after you're eating. And like for the water, what is the amount of time that you suggest, like spacing it out from the food? Yes. That is something I'm always consciously thinking about now.
So that's another thing, the water, because think of water is going to be a diffuser, right? And we want to have really strong, powerful stomach acid at the time that we're consuming meals, because that stomach acid is required to denature proteins. So typically I suggest about 40 minutes prior to mealtime and 40 minutes post mealtime. Again, you can of course have a little bit of, a couple ounces of liquid or water during your mealtime to help wash it down, but ideally you're not gulping. Like when we think of going to a restaurant, a lot of times they'll just keep refilling that water and you're drinking, a good 15, 20 ounces of water before you're consuming your meal. Well, that's just going to completely dilute the strength of your stomach acid. So give yourself like that 40-minute window before and after where you're really conscious of the amount of liquid that you're consuming while eating.
Yeah, that was it. That again, it's always in the back of my mind. And in your program, I remember I did a test that you had your clients do a test to determine the strength of their stomach acid. So it gives you the ability to see, okay, this is one of the areas that I really need to work on.
Yes. And believe it or not, so many people are shocked to discover that they have the sensation of maybe what they perceive as elevated stomach acid, like, whether it be like tightness in their throat or burning sensation, they think they have acid reflux. And often I've had so many clients who are on proton pump inhibitor medication for elevated acid reflux. And when we do the test, it's actually the opposite. Majority of the time, it's actually suboptimal levels of acid reflux that don't signal to the esophageal sphincter to like close. So because it's not signaled to close, a little bit of reflux when you eat may bubble up into the esophagus, and that's the sensation that they're feeling. But it's not because they have too much. In fact, they have too low. And if you have sustained suboptimal digestion for low stomach acid over a period of 2, 5, 10 years, that has a dramatic impact on chronic disease. Because now all of the nutrients you're bringing on board, you're only getting a fraction of the benefit of it.
Wow, crazy. Love it. Learning so much from you. Okay, so number 4 was eating hygiene. And then what is number 5?
Number 5 is the stories that we tell ourselves. And what I mean by that is really our emotional, again, coming back to the emotion, right? That HPA-TG axis, the hypothalamus is so influential. The stories that we tell ourselves when we feel emotions like guilt, or when we feel emotions like overwhelm. For many of us, the stories then become almost like the self-flagellation, like, oh, I put too much on my plate, or I wish I didn't do this, or I wish I did do that. And so we just kind of ruminate and perpetuate that negativity. But actually, I want to perhaps share a perspective that when we feel guilt or when we feel overwhelmed, we should like celebrate and high five, like, yes, our emotional guidance system is working. It's appropriately signaling to us, just like if you take your hand and you put it on a hot stove, your nerves are working. They're going to say, move your hand away. Like, that's a good thing, right? We don't want to criticize the nerves or keep our hand there and say, no, you shouldn't be feeling that pain. No, we want to be aware of that pain because now we get to do something different. So when you have that emotion of guilt or overwhelm, instead of telling yourself a story that like, I should have done differently, or this is bad, or something's wrong with me, celebrate that awareness and just recognize like, that just simply means I'm thinking about whatever topic I was thinking about from an unuseful vantage point. There's got to be a new way of looking at this. And if you start to ask like, well, what's a different way I could look at this? The faster you can close that gap, as you said, Megan, and celebrate that awareness and then ask a different question, the faster you change that whole HPA-TG axis of signaling in your body, which affects every single hormone balance.
Yeah. And it really just takes like a moment for you to stop and think about, okay, what am I feeling in my body? And we don't do that very often, if at all, right? Yeah. What am I feeling in my body? What is this telling me? What is the story I'm telling myself right now? And just being more aware of, what is going on? What's actually going on up here and in your body? And what is a different choice? And being curious, coming to it from a place of curiosity. What is this telling me? What can I choose differently? And, I'm guilty of it. A lot of times I'll go to bed at night, or like end my day and be like, I only got 4 things on my list of 20 done today, and oh my gosh, and I start, beating myself up for it. And then the next day I wake up and it's like, again, it's like, oh God, all these things I got to catch up from yesterday, and I got to do this stuff today. And yeah, that doesn't leave us feeling good. And how does that make us, inspired to like continue working and doing the things that we love when we're beating ourselves up for not getting things done? But even, I'm not a mom myself, but I can imagine like moms go through that too. Like, oh, like I should have done this for my kids, or I should have, like I didn't do this. So many of us do it every day. And just taking that moment to say, okay, it happened. What am I feeling? What is this telling me? And what can I do differently next time? What can I learn from this? What can I change going forward? Because you can't change the past. So there's no point in getting upset over it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this again, going back to, I'm going to kind of tie it more specifically to hormones, going back to what we talked about, that very common imbalance between estrogen and progesterone. Well, progesterone in particular starts to naturally drop off prior to estrogen for women, primarily in their 40s. And when that starts to become disproportionately imbalanced, then estrogen dominance already presupposes women's or humans' propensity towards anxious thoughts. So when we have anxious thoughts, sometimes we can get into, again, it's this perpetual cycle of blame and something's wrong with me, and why can't I just snap out of it? Why can't I think differently? Well, a lot of times clients are actually, it's almost like a huge sense of understanding and relief when they recognize, well, sometimes it's not just in your head. There literally is a physiological imbalance with your hormones that is going to have your hormonal signals lean in that direction. So let's see what we can do to support the hormone levels so that it can help you to have more control over your thoughts as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's so interesting. Wow. And Dr. Jan commented, she said, in the future, I'm going to celebrate instead of feeling guilty about eating that chocolate covered donut. I know I shouldn't have eaten. Emotional eating. Oh my gosh, I love it. Dr. Jan, that's great. Yes, exactly. It's like, once you eat it, there's nothing you can do to change it. So let's celebrate and think, okay, what's a healthy choice I can make next time? There's nothing. Yeah. But yeah, let's just give ourselves more grace and celebrate life more. I mean, we only have one life here on earth, so let's celebrate it as much as possible instead of making ourselves feel crappy about it, because there really truly is so much out there in life to celebrate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I want to celebrate you, Amanda. Thank you so much for showing up for me and showing up for all of us today. The gift that you're sharing is just, it's so incredible. I know you're helping so many people, and I love that you took the time to go learn all of this to share with people and really help the clients that you have.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, well, it was kind of a divine direction in my life, because my own personal health challenges, and then my family, my daughter's health challenges, it was just something that was inspired and absolutely a life-changing experience for a whole family.
Yeah, it's crazy to see, like, your whole family, like everybody is so healthy, and you went through a lot to get here. But to see how healthy and happy everybody is, it's truly amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you again. Thank you everyone for joining in. We hope to see you next time. I'll be doing this every few weeks, sharing people who are part of our expert resources for the mastermind group, so that they can share their information and really support you on your journey as well. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.
Bye.